Mistakes were made. Tools were broken. Paper towels were wasted. This is real life. This is what happens. Mistakes happen. Hey, all right, welcome back to the shop. So last week, what did we do last week? Last week, I had to think about it. Last week we rebuilt our head, we got it ready for a 350X. And like I said, take a big project and break it down into smaller projects. We did the clutch, we did the head, we're gonna do a carburetor. We're gonna do tonight, we're gonna actually pull the cylinder. We're gonna, for the first time, really take a good look at our piston and really check it out, make sure we're gonna be okay to reuse it. I'm banking, literally, on being able to reuse the piston. I've bought rings for standard size. I saw this was a standard piston. And my full intention is just to re-ring this only because I'm here. We really wouldn't have to tear it down that far, but if we didn't, then I would never know the condition of the rod, the condition of the piston. You could put the head back together, put it all back up, ride it 5 minutes and find out that this rod's knocking, or find out that it's got really low compression, or maybe it won't even start. And then we'd be back to having a complete engine that doesn't run, and we have to start all over. So this is one of those decisions that you have to make in a longer term project. How far do you tear an engine down, or any piece of equipment? You know, once you find the problem per se, in this case, you know, if you don't remember, when we got this one in, it had no compression, zero compression. And so what we found was a bent valve. Could have just stopped right there. Could have put a new head on it with some valves on it and fired it up and see what we had to work with. And that would have been an option. I prefer to tear this down a little bit further. I'm just going to take it down. I'm not going to split the cases. I don't think it warrants that. I really think it was just poor maintenance that what killed it. So tonight we're going to pull the cylinder, we're going to pull the piston, we're going to check our rod bearings out, and just kind of give it a once over. I'm using diesel fuel, and I want to flush the bottom of the block out, or bottom of the case out. I'm going to put some paper towels down. You'll see me do that. And I want to kind of catch that sediment that comes out, and I want to kind of look at it. The oil that came out of this machine when I drained it had a gray tint to it, which is not good. It could be a lot of clutch residue, which we saw the state of the clutch when we did the clutch 2 videos ago. The clutch was shot, so there's definitely a lot of that in the oil, but we don't know what else is in the oil. Could that be, you know, bigger problems down the road? I don't know. So here we got our 350X. I pulled it back out of the frame. It was just sitting there. I'm going to go ahead and pull off a few of these key components. I don't want to lose them. I know where they go. Again, download the manual. It's free. There's no excuse not to. My objective today is to pull the oil pump, pull the guides out of it, inspect them, pull the timing chain out of it, replace it, pull the head, and really get a good look at that piston. We know the engine cycles, so the piston is not froze up or anything like that. If you're going to use a hammer, try to use a soft blow hammer, plastic hammer. Sometimes you can just use your hands. You got to be careful. It's tough, but you still want to be careful. So the head gasket looks fine. I don't see any blowouts. Sometimes maybe one runs hot, they'll blow out and they'll split. Too much compression, too high RPMs. You know, just a poorly made gasket. But the gasket looks good. I will not be reusing that, but I always like to take a moment and inspect it. Make sure your dowel pins are in good. This is our first guide here. It just lifts straight out. What you're looking for is wear, and I don't see any wear at all on that guide. Normally they'll belly out in the middle where the chain rubs against them, so that one's fine. That is certainly a reusable guide. This one actually bolts in, so we'll need to take it out. Everything in here is going to be 10 millimeter or 12 millimeter. That came out really weird. It should have just came straight out loose. I'm surprised at that. There is a washer and a spacer that this rides on, and that's what allows it to float. And that guide looks new also. The more I dig into this, the more I really think somebody's been in here. Let's look really closely at this. See this yellow stuff? I don't know what that is. I don't know if y'all can see that on the camera or not. That's really weird. So, you see this, I'm going to say it's thread lock. It has the spacer on it, but it is a particular size, so I don't want to get it confused with something else. So I'm going to put it right back in the side of the case, just to hold that spot and to keep that bolt out of the way. Now we are going to have to pull the oil pump on this machine because it actually captures the timing chain. That's how those bolts should come out. Now this bolt's special. If you look close, it's hollow. And oil passes through that and feeds this tube. It's very important. This is the oil pump here. There is an O-ring here on the back side of this one, and like there should have been. Okay, so I'm just looking for things that are missing. Things that I've learned in the previous 350X that we tore down. And then apply it to this one. Put my bolts back where they came from. Now the timing chain, or excuse me, the oil pump is pretty straightforward. It does have several O-rings, and I think that's part of the problem with this particular system. You're really relying on about 6 O-rings not to fail. Take our oil pump out like that. If you look on the back, should have been an O-ring here, which is the main pickup here, and then these are just dowels that align the pump and also space it off of the block. Again, just follow suit so I don't forget anything. If the rod bearing's good, we can clean this block and get started right away and putting it back together. Maybe not tonight, but maybe about tomorrow night. So this is our timing chain. You can just kind of fish it around. You see how it was captured by the oil pump. It doesn't exactly fall out. It'd be nice to be able to test these and find out if they're old or not. I know you can just lay it next to the new one and see if it's stretched or anything, but it would have to be pretty well stretched for that test to really tell you anything. So, gaskets cost money, rings cost money. Every time you take something apart, and this is something a lot of people don't realize, every time you take a piece of equipment apart, it's going to cost you money generally to put it back together if you're going to do it right. If you're going to put gaskets on it and ring it and all of those types of things, it's going to cost you money. And so be prepared for that. Taking it apart's free part, but when you go to put it back together is when it's going to start costing you some money. All right, so there's our cylinder. See if there's any surprises here. Again, this is the first time you're seeing it live with me. Well, I don't guess you're live, are you? Maybe. So we're seeing this for the first time together. Our cylinder looks really good. From what I could see when we pulled the head on it, I felt pretty confident that our cylinder was good. What we'll do is we'll take our rings and we'll put them back in the cylinder and we'll do a check on them and we'll see if they're in spec. The cylinder looks great. It doesn't have a lot of cross hatching. Of course, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. But if you look closely, I don't think you're going to see any cross hatching left in there. But that's okay. I don't see any gouges, any nicks, any... Remember, we dropped a valve in this motor. This is all bonus at this point. We really got off lucky. You talk to most people, they tell you a drop valve is catastrophic. I mean, it'll just tear up everything. So we're going to pull this around. We want to look at our piston and see how much play. Now, but the rule of thumb is the rod itself, which this is the rod here, this is the part we're talking about, should have little to no side-to-side play. Okay, if this rod has any play between the two rotating parts of the crank, This is your crank on either side. This is our rod. If there's any play between these three components, you need a rod bearing. Okay, don't kid yourself. Don't put it back together. It's shot. It needs to be redone. If you can take this rod and go like that with it, that's bad. And so let's see what we got. I'm going to try to hold on just to the rod and not touch the piston. And I can't feel any play. I'm picking up the motor, and there's no play up and down in that rod. So again, home run. Let's look at the rod though for discolorization. Look how discolored it is. See where it got hot right here? You can also look down in here. I'll move the camera so you can see. You can also see the crank got hot too. Now that's not necessarily the end of the world, but it definitely got hot. See the discolorization in the rod as it comes up? Okay. Pretty normal. I mean, it's gonna get hot in there. There just ain't no way around it. Most of them you take apart, there's going to be some discolorization. Two strokes are really bad about that. And that really comes down to running your carburation really lean, your air fuel mix really lean, motor's running really hot, and it's on its way to blowing up an engine. That's just what that leads to. Looking at our piston, we've got a lot of debris here on the top. It would have been right here on this particular, so these are eyebrows, these are valve reliefs. And what that is for is if the timing is off, when the valve is down, it's not supposed to hit the piston. Well, it did, and that's where it hit right there. I can just barely catch my fingernail on it. I think I'm gonna pull the piston. It's not that hard of a job. I'm gonna pull the piston. It's got two ring clips or spiral clips on either side. I'm going to pull one, pop the pin out. We're going to run the piston through the parts cleaner. Let's clean it up and see what we're looking at. I can look at it. It says HAS, which is standard piston for this particular machine. N, of course, is your intake. If you ever see a piston, you want to know which way. You can put it in this way or you can put it in the other way, but one way is wrong. So N is always intake, so this is the carburetor sits on this particular engine here. The intake comes in and then the exhaust wraps around it. Looking at these rings, they're not seized. Y'all watched this channel long enough now that most of the time when I pull these down that the rings are completely compressed inside the piston and they're not moving and I have to pick at them. The last one I had was exactly that way. But look how these rings are. Look how these rings, they're free, they're floating. There's a pretty large gap here. You know, that gap wasn't that big probably when they put them on there for sure. But these rings were working. I felt them when I was turning the engine, the resistance, and that's that spring pressure, or ring pressure. And so they create pressure on the inside of the cylinder, and that's what I was feeling when I was spinning the engine. But this is a home run. I mean, my goodness, this is great. All I lack really at this point to feel confident in rebuilding this engine is to flush the inside of the engine and get as much of the debris and any trash out of the block. There's a spiral clip right here. Okay, this is your wrist pin. That's what they call it. If you think about it, it's just like your wrist. This is your rod. This is your wrist pin. Your hand would be the piston. First thing, and always first thing, is cover up this hole, because I promise you that is where that ring clip is going to want to go. Its entire job, its entire life is to fall out of there and fall down in there. It's looked forward to it for a long time. We're not going to let that happen. All right. So right here you're going to find that there's a little gap. Keep your hand in front of it, because you don't know it's going to pop out on you, because that's what it wants to do. Alright. It's not that much tension. It's not going to hurt you per se, but it would certainly fly across the shop and get lost real quick. So we're going to lay that there somewhere important. I'm going to take and push the wrist pin out this direction, because that's the direction we pulled the clip out, and then you can take the piston off. That's it. So this is our wrist pin. It looks really normal. It's going to have some discolorization. It's going to have some wear on it. That's what it does. This is our top of our rod here, and here we get a good look at our piston. And I'm showing you all this in real time. It's not that hard. HA5, that is the Honda factory original piston. Once we clean this up, we'll verify that again. If it was an oversized piston, it would have 0.025 or 1.0 or whatever it is. You can also mic this with a dial caliper and check it for the you know, against the book. So there's our piston. A couple things. You want to make sure these grooves all the way around are nice and straight. You want to make sure that nothing's come in contact and pinched them. That's going to stop a ring from being able to walk around. When we clean it, we're going to want to make sure all of these holes are cleaned and not have any debris in them where we run a wire through there. These are oiling rings. Oil comes up underneath the piston, and the force of when it comes down, it squirts oil through these holes, and that's what lubricates that lower ring, which of course ends up lubricating all the rings. I'm going to put you guys on time lapse, and I'm going to flush the inside of this engine out. I'm going to lay a paper towel down here so it's nice and white. We can see the contrast. Maybe if there's any debris in there, when it flushes out, we'll be able to catch it. So before we hone this cylinder or dingleberry it or crosshatch it or whatever term you want to call it. Last time I called it a hone, I kind of got called out a little bit. I think it's kind of one of those northern southerner kind of things. We here in the South, we call it a hone. Sorry if y'all don't up north. Couple things. So I went ahead and just curiosity's sake, just because we just did one of these, I just happened to remember that the service limit on a top ring on a 350X is 13 thousandths is the minimum, 27 thousandths is the maximum. That's the service limit. You got to replace it before, you know, 27 thousandths. So what I want to do is I've got out some just real basic stuff here. This is Harbor Freight at its best. I'm not trying to say, you know, tell you that it's not. We've got a Pittsburgh, you know, that's top quality stuff there. So caliper, and then I've also got a bore cylinder reader, basically. These are just some basic hand tools. I mean, they're not basic, but once you get them, they're pretty neat to use, and you can learn a lot from them. You can kind of tell a lot about what's going on with an engine or any type of thing, really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ring and I'm going to put it back in here. This is the top ring. I'm putting it back in our cylinder. We are going to need a feeler gauge. Last video I had to run out and buy another feeler gauge. You know what happened? I lost it. You know when I found it? As soon as I got back with the new feeler gauge, I found the old feeler gauge. That's how it goes sometimes. Luckily it wasn't expensive. So I'm going to take our piston. This is the one that came out of this engine and basically letting it soak. I'm going to take it face down, if you will. And I'm kind of just pushed it in here. And I had a subscriber tell me to take this reading more of the belly of the cylinder, a little deeper, not near the top. So I'm gonna take his recommendation. I'm gonna push it down about halfway of the cylinder. We'll put the piston back in. It needs another 30 minutes or so to simmer. And now what we've got is we've got our ring sitting here. Got a little water on it there. And what we want to do is we want to measure the gap that's right there. We know that so a feeler gauge, this is in thousandths. That's 2 thousandths, 6 thousandths, and it works its way all the way up. We know that the minimum is 13 thousandths. That's the brand new ring. So that's not surprisingly that goes through there. Now we're going to work this up, and we know that the actual tolerance for replacement is 27 thousandths. So here's a 25 thousandths feeler gauge, and it goes through there no problem. I mean, it's not even dragging. And what you're reading is, you know, I'm giving away free tires. That's right, free tires this month. September 30th, I'm giving away 3 free tires. Here's the skinny on that. factory size, whatever size that may be. If you've got a 250R, we can put tires on it. If you've got a 110 with some 25 inches on it, we'll put tires on it. I'm going to drop ship 3 tires to the winner. You have to join. You have to become a member. With the $6, I'm going to send you out a sticker kit. Start out big. I'm going to send you out a brand new set of tires. We're going to drop ship them from Amazon. Somebody's going to win 3 tires September 30th. We'll do a video about it. Only thing I ask is you send me a picture with the tires. That's it. How easy is that? You get stickers, you get entered in a contest. All you gotta do is send me a picture. I appreciate it. Good luck. Right below this video, you can see the new join button. It's something new that YouTube started. Hit that join button, become a member, subscribe, and you'll be automatically entered. It's a lot like if you read when you do a spark plug, when you gap a spark plug, you want it to touch, but you don't want it to bind, you know? So just barely touch. And I'm gonna say it's not touching at all. There's plenty of play in there. Now what you can do, I don't know how accurate this is. I'm going to take a 25 thousandths, as you can see, and I'm going to take a 2 thousandths I'm going to put with it. In my simple mind, that's 27 thousandths. And 27 thousandths slides right in there, but it is touching. Yeah, it's touching. I'm going to say that gap is 27 thousandths. So we'll take the 2 away, we'll add the 3. Okay, so now it's 25 and 3. So now we're at 28 thousandths. That does not want to slide in as easy, but it will slide in, and it is dragging. So I'm going to say that that top ring, that gap is 28 thousandths. And that's easy. That's how easy it is. It's not that complicated. You just need a feeler gauge. They sell these. They're like $10. This was actually made in America. It says so. You got to believe it. If they stamp it on there, you're supposed to believe it. But yeah, that's it. So you just want to get this out without scratching up your cylinder too much. There you go. Now you see when I pulled it back out, it took, look at all this crud that it came with it. See all that? That's carbon buildup, and what that is the carbon where the piston stops. If you look really close, there's a ring right here, and that's where the actual ring of the piston, I don't want to put anything in there to scratch it, comes all the way up, but it doesn't go up flush to the top. That's where that ring was stopping, and so it left a little bit of carbon buildup all the way around, and when I just brought that ring out, it brought that with it. One of the things that the dingleberry or the flex hone is going to actually clean up for us. So let's get started with that. Alright, so what we're going to do, I've got diesel fuel in this. Don't tell OSHA, that's what it is. Here. There you go. Alright, now OSHA will be happy. So what we're going to do here is, you've seen me do this before. I like to clean the cylinder after I hone it, of course. There's no point cleaning it before. What we're going to do, this is a dingleberry, this is a flex hone. If you've never seen one before, it attaches to a cordless drill. It's pretty straightforward. The rock material that this is actually made out of is actually going to scratch the cylinder, and that's what we're doing here. We are not boring, we are not oversizing, we are not enlarging this. All we are doing is scratching the surface. That's all these are capable of doing. Okay, so the trick here on this is you do want to keep it very lubricated. So I'm going to use this bucket here. Y'all know I like my coffee. All right, I'm going to very generously lubricate the cylinder. And we're going to run this 15 strokes in each direction. Alright, I'm going to change directions now and move the camera for y'all. There you go. Alright, now let's see what we got. We got a mess is what we got. I like diesel fuel for cleanup. I like it for a lubricant. It leaves a nice oil on everything it touches. It's cheap. It's readily available. I know it's $5 a gallon, but my goodness, you're getting a gallon of it. You know what liquid wrench is? That's about 10 ounces for 12 bucks. And don't think you did anything wrong if you have to do this more than once. I'll probably do it twice myself. I mean, you're here, you might as well, you know, get it right. You know what I'm saying? So what you're wanting is a crosshatch. Probably by now everybody's talked about a crosshatch and what it consists of and how it looks. And it is just that. If you just look right here, you'll see the actual crosshatching. I think this could go again. But it certainly is cleaned up. It's took any of the deglazing off of it. It's going to give us a nice surface for our rings to reseat. See that crosshatch? I hope that's coming through on the camera. It's kind of hard to look through a camera lens and then look with your regular eyes and get it all to line up, but hopefully y'all can see that. It looks really good. I'm going to do it one more time just because I'm here. I've got the tools. Everything's laid out. It's no harm. It's not going to hurt anything. It can only help at this point, really. Crosshatch in here, you know, was factory and really wasn't worn off because the piston doesn't ride down here. But here, it was. Now look how good that turned out. Let me get the flashlight. That's what we're talking about. And that's why we do it. That is a nice, there's a nice fingerprint right there too. But that is a very, very nice cross-hatching. I like that. I'm pleased to say I did that. All right. That's all there is to it. You can get that tool off of Amazon. It's just nice to have the right tool in the shop when you need it. All right, so tonight, basically I'm going to let the engine sit here and drip dry. I've sprayed the entire inside of it down twice now, one on camera and one off, and I've just let it all run out on this little pan. And let me tell you about this little pan. If you ever crate trained a dog, this is the pan out of the bottom of the kennel. It works perfect for this. Now I've seen big sheep pans that are this size or close to this size. This came out of a dog kennel. It's rubber. It's really, really tough. No, don't use it again for an animal because now it's going to stink. But we no longer crate train Chloe. This was when Chloe was little. But this is Chloe's kennel bottom. We're not going to use it, you know, if and when we ever get another dog. If for some reason we needed to, we'll just get another liner, put it in the same kennel. But anyways, that's where this came from. It works perfect. It's really tough. I haven't been able to poke a hole in it yet. It's easy to take outside and rinse off too, so I like that. But if you look across my table, you can kind of see what we're getting geared up for. We've got our cylinder honed. It's ready, major component. Clutch is rebuilt. You know, I'll have to put that back on. I'm going to go through and check the oil pump out. We've got a case half over there. We got our new part sitting back here. We got a new timing chain. We got a cam and cam chain sprocket that came together. Underneath here, we've got our head that we rebuilt last week. It's kind of precarious, but it's all there. So as you see, I took one big problem, I broke it down, found all the little problems, and I fixed each one of them, each component, and then we're going to stick it all back together. And when we get done, it should be a running and driving machine again. That's the hope. Our head's redone. We've replaced all 4 valves. We're really close. I think one more evening out in the shop, and I think I'll be ready to stab it back in the frame. Not tonight, but tomorrow night probably we will put it back in the frame. All right, here's a tip for you. Don't get an argument with your barber. Yeah, Corey got a hold of me good, didn't he? Yeah, you think it's summer. I gotta tell you, tonight was beautiful. As the sun went down, it was about 60 degrees outside. I was cutting grass. A great time to be alive. I mean, it's the perfect time to be outside. Well, anyways, now we're back in the garage, and we're off the lawnmower, and we're doing 3-wheeler stuff. So, like I explained to you, don't take a big project on. Don't. You'll get overwhelmed with it, especially if it's your first time. take a big project and break it down into little projects. And that's what we're doing. This whole video series about this particular bike is small little projects that all are going to add up to one big finale, if you will. So right now what we're going to do, we're going to put the rings on the piston. A lot of questions about this, and so let's take a moment and kind of go over that. The way the rings lay out, you have 3 oiling rings. You have a wafer ring in the middle of 2 thinner rings. They are obviously different in size and shape than your top and middle ring. They go on the bottom, if you were, the lowest ring of the piston. Then you have 2 other rings. Now we've talked about this in other videos. I'll go over it again. These are really hard to see. Now this is Honda parts, but it's still hard to see. You have an R here in silver, and you have an R here on the second ring in black. Now sometimes you'll have an RN, sometimes you'll have a T, sometimes you'll have a dot. Whatever you see, whatever letter or information is written on the top, that means that information points up. So that is the top of the ring. But now you have the question, which ring goes where? The silver ring, the one in my right hand here, actually is a top ring. And the black ring is actually the second ring. Okay? So when you're putting rings on, you kind of have to fumble with it a little bit. You need a good lubricant. Diesel fuel works good. WD-40 works good if you have any. I don't have any with me in here, so we're just going to make do with what we have. You don't have to grease it up. It's not like it's such a tight fit, but you don't want it to scratch. You don't want it to chip. You don't want it to catch an edge and break. The rings are a little brittle. They're strong in some sense, but they're also a little brittle. You can catch one of these edges, and if you're rough, if you're heavy-handed with it, you can chip it off, and you certainly don't want to do that. So a little bit of lubricant, a little bit of spray goes a long way. Our piston's clean. It's come out of the hot tank here, or the ultrasonic cleaner. I took a thin wire and I ran through all of these holes, all of these passages, and made sure all of them were clear, so when oil is pushed up in here, it will oil these rings. That's what they're designed to do. So just put a little on here. We're going to end up getting a new, there we go, it's working now. Okay, so I just got a little bit of lubricant on my hand. I'm going to go ahead and start. I start with the oiling ring, and I'm going to tell you, I start with the wafer. I find that the wafer is one of the more difficult ones to get right. And so I'm going to go ahead and set my wafer down the way I do rings, and there's a lot of different, there's a real tricky way. It's like doing a deck of cards. I don't know how to do that. So I just take the ring and I set it down in its groove with my left thumb, and as you see, it's spiraling around. I don't want to overstretch it. I want to keep it as tight as I can, and I just pull it out just the bare minimum. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure that ring comes all the way back together. Okay, it's not hanging up anywhere. All right, then I do the same thing. I take the lower ring and I bring it just underneath the wafer. You see here, the ring is coiling around, and I just barely put any tension on it, enough just to open it up. And I want to get it underneath that wafer. Now you could put this ring on first, I guess, but this is just how I do it. What I had a hard time with is I was getting the wafer ring, trying to get it in a tight area, and the wafer ring wanting to kind of bunch up and not do right. So I found if I started with the wafer ring, I can get it right. And then the other rings, now these do not have a top or bottom, okay? They are the same both ways. Some people ask that too. So now I want this ring to go just above the wafer ring. So in essence, you've got 3 items in that one groove. But that is the oiling ring for this piston. And there you go. So the most important thing at this point is you want to make sure your gaps are opposite of one another. So we have a gap here at the top of this first ring, and then we'll follow it around and see where the gap is on our second ring. Looks like I'm gonna have to move it. I didn't even see a gap. Did y'all see a gap? There's that gap. You can use a pick or a knife, or there it is. So we got one there and we've got one there. So they're way too close together. So we want to go ahead and move those. Now, I know that what I just told you has been argued by a lot, and I'll go ahead and tell you the argument. Piston rings walk around the piston on a 4-stroke. That is not the case on a 2-stroke. But on a 4-stroke, they do. Okay? So if we know that the rings are walking, then there's a strong chance at some point in time that the rings are going to line up. It's inevitable. Okay? It's just all part of it. Somebody's mad at me for using this knife. I know. Gotta be careful, right? Alright, so we've got a ring gap here and a ring gap here, polar opposites. Now I am going to take them completely and I'm going to turn them 180 from the wrist pin. I don't know why, I just did. So now we've got our oil ring set. I'm going to put a little more fuel on here. It's diesel fuel, it's a very good lubricant. I'm going to take the black ring. Okay, this would be our scraper ring. It's very, very hard to see. I'll zoom in on the camera. Barely see it. Okay, so now with our R in place, make sure. They could have made that a little easier to see, couldn't they? About time for some glasses, isn't it? So your second ring goes literally, it's in the second hole from the top. And so I do it the same way. I get it started here with my thumb and I just walk it out a little bit, just the barest minimum. Try not to let this edge right here catch on the top of the piston, just for argument's sake. All right, now you see how far that ring sticks out? See that? That's what you want, that ring to be loose and free and move around, but it's gonna stick out beyond the piston. That way when it's in the cylinder, it squeezes and compresses. All right. So now we got our top ring. We have our R here, it's facing up. We know this is our top ring. Pretty straightforward. I'm gonna go ahead, there's our gap. I'm gonna go 180 degrees on that gap. I'm going to insert in that first part of the ring, hold it here with my thumb, and I'm just going to pull back in this direction until that ring gets all the way around the piston. There you go. Okay. Again, make sure your gaps are opposite of one another of all 4 rings, not just the top 2 and not just the bottom 2. All right, just wanted to we're getting things cleaned up. We're getting ready to start reassembly. And I took the time to let this engine drain. You saw me rinse it off yesterday, and I laid it over on its side, and I rinsed it again, and I flushed it out with the diesel fuel. And this is what's come out of it. And I mean, it's bone dry and as clean as it can be on the inside. Diesel fuel does a great job. But I wanted to look on this paper towel. The majority of the fluid came out onto the towel. And I did it for a reason. I wanted to see if there was any pieces or parts or fine material or anything. I mean, it's basically an oil filter is what I've created here. And I don't see anything. I don't see anything that causes alarm. But you can see how clean and what a good job that diesel fuel does all the way down in the back there. I mean, it's clean. But being able to let it drain, not being in a hurry, that certainly helps out. We'll let gravity do some of the work. getting kind of late. I don't want to make a lot of noise in the house right now anyway. That's it. Even a big project, take your time and break your work schedule up into smaller amounts so you don't get frustrated. So you can stay focused on what you're doing. You're not distracted by the phone and bills and life and all that kind of things. If you can dedicate an hour to your project, then do an hour. Don't do 5 hours and neglect a bunch of other stuff and put it on the back burner. Delegate your time just like you do the project. Tonight we got a lot done. We're fixing to put the side cover back on. It's going to take me a while probably to get this old gasket off. I'm not going to bore you with that. It's just, I'll put it on time lapse. Get that old gasket off, and then the outside cover is ready to go on. We're ready to go on with our head. I want to take a moment. I'm gonna go over a few things with the head and the cam, where it came from, who I got it from, and just really a shout out to the three-wheeler community. These parts are not made anymore, and they are getting hard to find, and we are having to rely on one another to take care of the parts and to share them or sell them, but without the community of three-wheelers supporting one another with parts and information, and this is my way of giving back, is these videos to help you figure these problems out so where you can do it yourself. I'm no mechanic, I'm no expert. I'm just going to show you how I do it, and you can kind of follow on and figure it out as you go. That's where we're going to leave it tonight. I'm not going to go into a lot more detail. We've got our new timing chain on. We've got new rings on our piston. We got our new head gasket put on. Y'all didn't see that. We've got these 2 bolts in. Like I said, we are 80% there. I think tomorrow night we'll be able to finish this up and maybe get it back in the frame. So heads up, this weekend is my birthday, and so this is my birthday present to get this up and running and ride it for this video, and so that'll be my present to myself. Let's see if we can make that happen. Today is Wednesday. Unless something crazy happens, and what I mean by that is our rocker box is not here. It's in the mail, and I'm hoping that it gets here by Friday, and so that would give me a little bit of time to get it installed. I'm putting it in the frame. Rocker box or no rocker box, it's going in the frame. We will button everything else up, and we will sit and wait on UPS to get here so we can put that rocker box on. For you, I'll be right back. I'm going to go to bed and go to work and then do some stuff and then come back here, and I'll see you later. Bye.